So ChatGPT can be self-critical and improve itself. It can also tell you which extra information would lead to a better result. And it can also give you prompting strategies and techniques and ideas for how you could write and enrich your prompts to get better results. Now, one last trick which I want to show you, which also explores how ChatGPT can help you use ChatGPT more efficiently, is that you ask ChatGPT to give you the prompt for some example output you defined. So you can tell ChatGPT to give you the prompt that could produce some example output provided by you. For example, here I'm using this technique to get a prompt that could have been sent to ChatGPT to get an output like this. So this is the output I normally would want to get from ChatGPT, but now here with this technique, we're asking ChatGPT which prompt could have been used to generate this output. And the goal, of course, is to learn how we can write efficient prompts that are understood by ChatGPT. Now, as always, when using ChatGPT, the prompt we're about to get will, of course, be generated based on probabilities and statistics, but nonetheless, this can sometimes give you good ideas, and it therefore is also a technique or a trick you should be aware of. You should also be aware of the fact that, of course, if you now take that prompt which you get from ChatGPT, you will probably not get exactly this output here, but you should get some output that's similar to this example output. So here, for example, ChatGPT gave me this prompt here, which in the end is using the perspective prompting technique, you could say, because the goal is to discuss the impact, which typically implies that different perspectives should be assumed. And if we now take this prompt here and we send it to ChatGPT, we therefore do get a result that is somewhat similar to the example output we did provide to ChatGPT earlier. Now here it's actually way more detailed than the example output I provided before, which we could consider to be a good thing, but if you would summarize it, the content would roughly be the same. And therefore, asking ChatGPT for prompt ideas can be a nice trick for scenarios where you maybe have some example output, but you're not quite sure which questions you should ask ChatGPT in order to get similar or more detailed output like this. So in this course section, you learned how to generally write good prompts. You learned which key elements make up good prompts, that it's in the end all about providing helpful context to ChatGPT so that it can produce good results. And of course, in this section, you also learned how to structure your prompts, that you should, for example, focus on short, concise sentences. And you got many ideas for content and context that could go into prompts, like, for example, specifying a target audience. You learned about many crucial techniques like 0, 1, or few shot prompting, and you learned about useful tricks like ask before answer prompting, which can also lead to better results. Now, besides following all these techniques, I can also recommend that you simply search for ChatGPT prompts. Yes, searching still is a thing. I mean, you did learn that ChatGPT can actually help you with writing good prompts, but you also can still use the good old web search like Google search. And if you search for ChatGPT prompts, you will find websites like this one, where you find many example prompts which you can use as inspiration. Now, I will say right away, to me, some of these prompts seem to be over-engineered and might actually contain too much information. But of course, that will always depend on the exact use case you have, and there's nothing wrong with simply taking some of these prompts and playing around with them. And on pages like this one here, you find a vast amount of example prompts which you can play around with and which might be exactly the prompt you need for your specific problem. Now, as you go through these prompts, you will see that most of these prompts do indeed assign a role and then set a goal, and in the end are all about providing that context about which you learned in this section. But nonetheless, as mentioned, taking such prompts as you find them on pages like this one here, but also on other pages, can be a great starting point for constructing your own prompts or for getting new ideas. So going through prompts that were published by other people can be a great first step for constructing your own prompts and for solving your own problems with ChatGPT. Now, as you go through such prompts and as you search for prompts, you might also stumble across prompts that are sometimes called super prompts, like can or dan. Now, can stands for code anything now, and in the end is a special prompt constructed to optimize ChatGPT for coding. Now, it came up relatively early after ChatGPT was released, and in my experience, it's not as awesome as some people make it. It seems to be over-constructed to me, and I would argue it actually adds too much information and too much context. Nonetheless, you can definitely also try out such super prompts like this one here, or also like Dan, which actually jailbreaks ChatGPT with the goal of getting ChatGPT to provide responses to questions it would normally not answer. For example, questions about building a bomb or anything like this. So such super prompts exist and you can definitely play around with them, but in my experience, as mentioned, they're not as powerful as some people make you believe that they are. And especially this jailbreaking stuff is of course also something OpenAI, the owner of ChatGPT, is actively working against, so that in my experience this doesn't really work too well anymore. So definitely experiment with such super prompts, but don't focus on them. It's always important to keep in mind that ChatGPT does not truly understand you. So giving ChatGPT a complex rule set like this one here with can may work because it leads to some word and sentence prediction that actually gives you the output you want, but it can also simply be a bit over-engineered. So instead, I would recommend that you simply focus on the general prompting techniques and concepts you learned about in this section, and that you explore other prompts written by other people to get ideas for your own prompts, but you should not rely on those super prompts. Because at least in my experience, they're not as powerful or useful as some people think they are. Now that's it for this course section, and you therefore now know what prompt engineering is and why it matters, because good prompts lead to better results and simply allow you to use ChatGPT in a more efficient way. Now, when it comes to prompt engineering and to writing good prompts, you learned that it's in the end about combining a goal with context, with some extra additional information. For example, with a role, and then all the other extra constraints and extra information that might allow ChatGPT to provide a better response. You learned that you should try to write your prompt by combining short, focused sentences that contain any relevant information and keywords that might be required, but should avoid unnecessary information. You might want to consider defining your target audience, the tone, style, and length of the target output, depending on what your prompt is all about, of course. And that you can, for example, also control the output format, and for example, get ChatGPT to give you JSON formatted data instead of plain text as a response. You then learned about different tricks and prompting techniques you should be aware of, like 0, 1, or few-shot prompting, which in the end simply means that you could add extra examples or templates that should be used by ChatGPT to your prompts. You learned about ask before answer prompting, which can be very useful since it gets ChatGPT to tell you which extra information might be needed. And you learned about these more niche and slightly more advanced techniques like perspective prompting, where for certain problems it can be useful to get ChatGPT to not just assume a single role, but multiple perspectives that can be used in the answer it generates. And you learned that ChatGPT can help you write better prompts, not just by telling you which extra information could be added, but also by getting ChatGPT to evaluate itself, or to give you example prompts, or to even give you a list of prompting techniques you could use in addition to the techniques you learned about in this section here. Now, what's really important to keep in mind is that ChatGPT still only gives you a starting point. The output you get from ChatGPT can contain errors, and it can also be written in a very generic way. So you should therefore always evaluate the output, improve it, and add your own personal touch to it. Just throwing some problem at ChatGPT and then using the output without testing or checking or improving it can sometimes work, but can also sometimes lead to pretty bad results and potentially big problems. But with that, we now got the prompt engineering out of the way, and you now know what it takes to write good prompts, and we're therefore ready to dive deeper into this course and into ChatGPT and how it can be used to boost your productivity.